John Miller stood at the edge of his new property, squinting in the bright sunlight of New Horizon Colony. The message about his uncle's death had reached him 3 weeks ago on his small apartment on Earth. Now, after a long journey across the stars, he was here, owner of 50 acres of rocky, beautiful land on humanity's newest colony world. "Never thought I'd end up a rancher," John muttered to himself, running a hand through his graying hair. At 45, John's face showed the lines of someone who had seen too much. The Centauri War had taken its toll on all who served, but John had paid a higher price than most. His right arm and left leg were military-grade cybernetic replacements, and a neural implant at the base of his skull helped manage the phantom pain. Earth had become too crowded, too loud, too full of memories. So when the inheritance came through, he had jumped at the chance for a fresh start. The ranch house was simple but sturdy, built from local stone and imported wood. It sat on a small rise overlooking a valley of red-purple grass. In the distance, the gleaming domes and towers of New Horizon's main settlement caught the light. And just to the east, separated by a clear stream, stood the perfect houses of Earthview Estates. John had been warned about the neighbors even before he arrived. The colony administrator had pulled him aside after processing his arrival documents. "Those folks at Earthview brought Earth's old ways with them," she had said. "They've been trying to expand their territory for years. Your uncle held them off. Now it's your turn." John wasn't looking for trouble. After 15 years in the Terran Defense Force, fighting was the last thing he wanted. He just wanted peace, space to breathe, and maybe purpose again. He spent the first 3 days exploring his land. The ranch had a small herd of adapted Earth cattle, fields of native grain that his uncle had started cultivating, and a workshop filled with half-completed projects. It felt good to work with his hands again, to fix fences and repair machinery. On the 4th day, he felt it for the first time. A strange tingling at the base of his skull where his neural implant connected to his brain. John was checking the water purifier by the eastern stream when the sensation hit him. It wasn't painful, just unusual, like someone had brushed a feather across his thoughts. He straightened up, looking around. The land seemed different somehow, colors more vibrant, sounds sharper. For a moment he could swear he felt the heartbeats of the cattle half a mile away. Then it passed, leaving him blinking in confusion. "Well, that was weird," he said to himself. He made a mental note to check his implant's diagnostic readings later. John was kneeling by the stream, filling his water bottle, when he heard someone clearing their throat loudly. He looked up to see a woman standing on the other side of the stream. She was around 50, with perfectly styled blonde hair and wearing what looked like an expensive hiking outfit that had never seen a real hike. "You're trespassing on private property," John said, standing up slowly. His cybernetic leg whirred softly with the movement. The woman's eyes flicked to his mechanical limbs, and her lips tightened slightly. "I'm Susan Wright, president of the Earthview Estates Homeowners Association," she said, as if announcing herself as planetary governor. "And you are on the border of our community." John gestured to the stream between them. "Pretty sure your community ends at this water line, according to my property maps." Susan's smile didn't reach her eyes. "I came to welcome you to the area. We were quite close with your uncle, you know." That was a lie. John knew from his uncle's messages that the HOA had made his life difficult for years, but he decided to be polite. "Thank you. I'm John Miller." "Mr. Miller," Susan continued, "I wanted to make you aware of certain standards we maintain in this area. Your uncle's property has been something of an eyesore. Now that you're here, we hope you'll consider bringing it up to community guidelines." John looked back at his ranch. Sure, it wasn't as fancy as the identical white houses visible through the trees on her side, but it had character. "This property isn't part of your HOA, Ms. Wright. My uncle made sure of that." Susan's smile became even more forced. "True, but we all share the same valley. Your actions affect our property values. For instance, that communication tower your uncle installed is an eyesore, and these non-native plants along the stream could threaten the local ecosystem." John looked at the plants she was pointing at. They were earth tomatoes growing in a small garden beside the water. "Those are just tomatoes for my kitchen," he said. been approved by Colonial Agriculture. Nevertheless, Susan pressed, we have concerns, and that hardware you're carrying could interfere with our community systems. She was staring at his cybernetic arm now, not even trying to hide her discomfort. John had faced this before. People who saw veterans with enhancements as something less than human or worse, something more than human that threatened them. My hardware is standard military issue, ma'am. It doesn't interfere with anything. Susan took a small tablet from her pocket and seemed to make a note. We'll see about that. The colony is still new, Mr. Miller. Regulations are still catching up. Meanwhile, I've prepared some voluntary compliance guidelines for you. She held out a thin folder. John made no move to cross the stream to take it. I appreciate your concern, he said, but I'll be managing my property according to colonial law, not your guidelines. Susan's pleasant mask slipped for just a second, showing something harder underneath. That's unfortunate. Your uncle took the same attitude and it made things difficult for him. Is that a threat, Ms. Wright? Just stating facts. We at Earthview Estates value our community's security and appearance. Anything that threatens, that will be addressed. She dropped the folder on her side of the stream. My contact information is inside. Do reconsider, Mr. Miller. It's better to have us as friends than otherwise. As Susan turned and walked away, that strange tingling returned to John's implant. This time, it came with something else. A flash of emotion that wasn't his own. Fear. Not his fear, but hers. Susan Wright was afraid of him or what he represented, and there was something else. Something about the land itself. John looked down at the soil beneath his boots. What was it his uncle had written in his final message? The land has secrets, John. It knows things, and so will you once you're here long enough. John picked up a handful of soil, letting it run through his fingers. For a brief moment, he felt connected to everything around him. The plants, the animals, the sky above. The ranch wasn't just land, it was something more. And somehow Susan Wright knew it. John looked toward Earthview Estates. This wasn't going to be the peaceful retirement he had hoped for. But then again, when had his life ever gone according to plan? 3 weeks passed since John's first meeting with Susan Wright. In that time, he had settled into a routine on the ranch. He woke early, tended to the cattle, worked on repairs, and spent his evenings studying his uncle's notes. The strange sensations from his neural implant continued, growing stronger each day. John was fixing the barn roof when he saw the drone. Small and white, it hovered at the edge of his property, clearly recording him. The Earthview Estates logo was printed on its side. He waved at it sarcastically. This was the 4th time he'd spotted one of Susan's drones this week. Later that afternoon, as John was installing a new solar panel on the ranch house, a vehicle pulled up his long driveway. It wasn't Susan this time, but a man in his 60s, wearing the uniform of the New Horizon Colony Administration. Mr. Miller, I'm Frank Powell, Colony Code Enforcement. John climbed down from the roof, wiping his hands on his pants. What can I do for you, Mr. Powell? Frank looked uncomfortable. We've received complaints about unauthorized construction on your property, specifically modifications to the communications tower and installation of non-standard power equipment. John frowned. Everything I've done is within colonial regulations. I filed all the proper permits. Yes, well. Frank glanced down at his tablet. The complaint suggests your equipment may be causing interference with local systems. Let me guess, John said. The complaint came from Earthview Estates. Frank's silence was answer enough. Come on, John said. I'll show you everything. You can verify it's all up to code. As they walked the property, Frank relaxed. He was a practical man who knew his regulations, and he could see that John had done everything by the book. In fact, the solar array John was installing was more efficient than anything in the colony. Your military background shows, Frank commented as they examined the communications tower. This is better engineering than most of what we see out here. 15 years working on field equipment teaches you a few things, John replied. Listen, what's the real story with the HOA next door? My uncle's messages hinted at problems, but he never got specific. Frank looked around as if worried about being overheard. Earthview was founded by a group of wealthy Earth families. They wanted to recreate their gated communities here on New Horizon. They've got influence with some people in the colonial government. And Susan Wright? Former corporate lawyer. Retired here 4 years ago and basically took over the HOA. She's been trying to expand their territory ever since, especially towards your property. Why mine specifically? Frank hesitated. You really don't know? Your uncle never told you? John shook his head. This land sits on something special. The science folks call it a psionic node. There's unusual mineral deposits under this whole area that have strange properties. Your uncle was letting some researchers study it before he passed. The tingling at John's implant suddenly made more sense. What kind of properties? Above my pay grade, Frank shrugged. But the Aldebaran aliens are very interested in it. They claim it enhances certain mental abilities. The HOA crowd doesn't like aliens visiting so close to their perfect little community. After Frank left, John went back to his uncle's office and dug deeper into his files. Sure enough, he found research papers, correspondence with scientists, and records of visits from both human researchers and Aldebaran delegates. His uncle had been part of an official colonial research initiative. That night, John dreamed of stars and distant voices. He woke to the sound of his security system beeping. Someone was at his front gate. The clock read 3:17 a.m. Half asleep, John checked the camera feed. A woman stood there, but not Susan Wright. This woman was younger, maybe 30, with dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. She wore the uniform of the Colonial Science Division. John activated the intercom. Can I help you? Mr. Miller, I'm Dr. Lisa Reed from the Colonial Science Division. I apologize for the hour, but I need to speak with you urgently about your property. John hesitated, then opened the gate. 5 minutes later, Lisa sat at his kitchen table, clutching a cup of coffee. Your uncle was our main contact for the research project, she explained. When he died, we lost access to the site. We've been trying to contact you since you arrived. No one's contacted me, John said. Lisa looked surprised. We've sent multiple messages, official requests for site access, invitations to project briefings. She paused. Someone must be intercepting our communications. John thought of the communications tower that Susan had complained about. The HOA next door doesn't seem to like what's happening here. They've opposed our research from the beginning, Lisa confirmed, especially since we partnered with the Aldebarans. What exactly is happening on my land? Lisa leaned forward. Your property sits on one of only 5 known deposits of xenominerals that amplify psionic energy. The Aldebarans discovered that humans with certain neurological patterns can interact with these minerals. Psionic energy? You mean like ESP? Mind reading? Nothing so dramatic yet, but enhanced intuition, emotional sensitivity, sometimes remote sensing, and the effects are strongest in people with neural implants. She nodded toward John's skull where his implant was. Like yours. John thought about the strange sensations he'd been feeling, the moment he'd somehow sensed Susan's fear. So I'm, turning into some kind of psychic? Not exactly, but your implant is interacting with the mineral field. Have you experienced anything unusual? Sensations that aren't yours? Heightened awareness? John told her about the incidents by the stream and the strange dreams. Lisa nodded excitedly. That's consistent with our findings. The Aldebarans believe these sites are critical to understanding consciousness itself. The research could benefit veterans with neural trauma especially. And the HOA wants to stop this? John asked. They want the land. If they controlled this property, they could limit access to only approved human researchers. No aliens. They've filed multiple challenges to your uncle's land rights over the years. John remembered Susan's veiled threat. So what happens now? The Aldebarans are sending a delegation next week. They want to meet you and hopefully resume the research. They're bringing equipment to help you understand and control the connection you're developing with the field. And the HOA? Lisa's face grew serious. They'll fight it. Susan Wright has connections in the colonial government. She's already trying to get your permits revoked on false grounds. She claims your enhancements combined with the mineral field could create a security risk. John felt anger rising. He'd faced this kind of prejudice before. People fearful of veterans with cybernetic enhancements, treating them like they were dangerous or less than human. My land, my choice, he said, firmly. Tell the Aldebarans they're welcome here. After Lisa left, John couldn't sleep. He went outside and stood under the stars. The tingling in his implant spread through his body. He felt connected to the land somehow, as if it recognized him. The land has secrets, his uncle had written. Now John was starting to understand. This wasn't just about an HOA wanting to expand their territory. This was about fear of the unknown, fear of difference, and the future of human evolution. And somehow John had landed right in the middle of it all. The morning of the Aldebaran delegation's arrival brought clear skies and a sense of anticipation. John had spent the past week preparing the ranch. He cleaned out his uncle's old research room, fixed up the guest quarters, and set up the landing area for the visitor's ship. Dr. Lisa Reed arrived early to help with final preparations. She brought equipment to measure the mineral field's activity and a team of 2 assistants. The delegation includes 3 Aldebarans, she explained as they worked. Their ambassador, a scientific advisor and a veteran of the Centauri War who worked alongside humans. John looked up from the sensor he was installing. A veteran, like me? Lisa nodded. General Zara. She commanded the Aldebaran forces that helped evacuate Proxima Station, saved over 2,000 human lives. I was there, John said quietly. My unit was part of the last defensive line. We never saw the Aldebaran forces, but we heard they came just in time. Then this meeting might be more meaningful than you expected. As they worked, John noticed increased activity from the Earthview estates. Drones flew back and forth along the property line. Twice he spotted people with cameras watching from the edge of their community. They're documenting everything, Lisa said, frowning. Probably planning some kind of legal challenge. Around noon, they received a message from the Colony Port Authority. The Aldebaran ship had entered orbit and requested landing coordinates. John felt a mixture of nervousness and excitement. He had encountered Aldebarans during the war, but never spoke directly with one. The ship arrived precisely on schedule. It descended silently, a sleek vessel about the size of a small bus. With the curved organic lines typical of Aldebaran design, it touched down gently on the landing pad John had prepared. A door melted open in the side of the ship, and 3 figures emerged. Aldebarans resembled tall, slender humans with iridescent skin that shifted color slightly with their movements. Their eyes were larger than human eyes, solid blue with no visible pupils, and they had no hair on their bodies. The first Aldebaran wore formal attire with symbols of office. This had to be the ambassador. The second carried what looked like scientific equipment. The third wore a simple uniform with markings John recognized from the war. Welcome to my home, John said, stepping forward with a traditional Aldebaran greeting gesture his uncle had documented. The ambassador returned the gesture. John Miller, we are honored by your invitation. I am Ambassador Alara. This is science. Counselor Tellem and General Zara. General Zara stepped forward. Her skin had a slight greenish tinge and bore the faint markings of old injuries. Veteran Miller, you served at Proxima Station. It wasn't a question. John nodded. Yes, General. 3rd Battalion, Heavy Support Division. Your unit held the line that allowed many to escape. We remember your courage. Something passed between them, a moment of shared understanding that transcended species. Both had seen the same horrors, fought the same enemy. The meeting moved to the ranch house where John had prepared refreshments suitable for both humans and Aldebarans. As they discussed the research project, Science Counselor Tellem explained the significance of John's property. This mineral formation is unique. It resonates with certain neural patterns, creating a field effect that enhances natural psionic abilities. But humans don't have psionic abilities, John said. Tellem's skin shifted to a thoughtful blue. All sentient species have potential. In humans, it often manifests as intuition or empathy. Those with neural implants like yours sometimes develop stronger connections. Your uncle showed promising results, Lisa added. He could sense emotional states from nearby beings. With practice, he developed limited awareness of events happening elsewhere on the property. The research has implications beyond scientific curiosity, Ambassador Alara said. Enhanced communication between species could prevent future conflicts. Veterans with neural trauma might find healing through these connections. As they spoke, John became aware of something moving at the edge of his perception. He turned toward the window just as his security system chimed. "We have visitors," he said. The monitors showed a group of people approaching from the direction of Earthview Estates. Susan Wright led them, accompanied by 4 others in expensive outdoor clothing and a man in a colony security uniform. "I should handle this," John said, rising from his seat. "We will join you," General Zara stated. "This concerns our mission as well." John met the group at the edge of his property. Susan's eyes widened at the sight of the Aldebarans, but she quickly composed herself. "Mr. Miller," she said briskly, "I'm here with Colony Security Officer Jim Benson regarding an urgent community safety concern." Officer Benson looked uncomfortable. "Sir, we've received reports of unauthorized landing of an alien vessel and potentially dangerous activities. My team ship is registered with Colonial Port Authority," Ambassador Alara said. "Our visit is officially sanctioned by the Colonial Governor's Office." Susan stepped forward. "We have concerns about safety, unregulated alien technology, experimental, research, a military veteran with cybernetic enhancements all next to a residential community." The way she said military veteran made it sound like a disease. John felt a flash of anger, and immediately the tingling in his implant increased. He took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "Everything happening here is legal and approved," he said evenly. "Then you won't mind if Officer Benson inspects the premises?" Susan pressed. "Actually, I would mind," John replied. "This is private property and parts of this research are classified. Officer Benson would need a warrant based on probable cause, not just neighborhood gossip." Officer Benson shifted uncomfortably. "She's right that I'd need proper authorization to inspect, Mr. Miller." Susan wasn't backing down. "We have children in our community. We have a right to know if dangerous experiments are being conducted nearby." "No dangerous experiments are happening here," Dr. Lisa interjected. "This is a Colonial Science Division approved research project with Aldebaran partners." "So you say," Susan sniffed. "But we've documented unusual energy readings, suspicious gatherings, and potential violations of the Colonial Settlement Act regarding alien activities near human habitations." Ambassador Alara's skin shifted to a deep purple, a sign of concern in Aldebaran's. "Your accusations border on diplomatic misconduct, Ms. Wright. Our presence here is fully authorized." Susan pulled out her tablet. "I filed a formal complaint with the Colonial Council. Until this matter is resolved, all activities on this property should cease." John felt something shift in the air around them. The mineral field was responding to the rising emotions. He could sense Susan's determination, Officer Benson's discomfort, and surprisingly, fear from the other HOA members. "They're afraid," he realized suddenly. "Not just prejudiced, they're genuinely afraid of the unknown." "Ms. Wright," he said carefully, "I invite you and the community representatives to join us for dinner tomorrow. See the research for yourselves. Ask questions. Meet our visitors properly." Susan looked startled by the invitation. "That's hardly necessary." "I believe it is," John interrupted. "Fear comes from ignorance. Let's replace it with understanding." One of the other HOA members, a younger woman, spoke up. "I'd actually like to learn more about the research, if it's safe to do so." Susan shot her a look of betrayal, but General Zara stepped forward. "On my world, we have a saying. No barrier stands before shared food and honest words. We would welcome such an exchange." Susan's momentum faltered as she realized she was losing control of the situation. "This isn't over, Mr. Miller," she said stiffly. "Officer Benson, document everything you've seen here." As they turned to leave, John felt a brush against his mind, a sense of approval and something like pride. He turned to see General Zara watching him with what might have been a smile. "The field responds to you already," she said quietly, "just as it did with your uncle." The dinner with the Earthview Estates representatives was set for 6 p.m. the following evening. John spent the morning helping the Aldebarans set up their research equipment, while Dr. Lisa and her team prepared demonstrations to explain their work. "Will Susan Wright actually show up?" John asked Lisa as they arranged chairs in the main room. "She'll come," Lisa said, "if only to gather more evidence for her complaints. The question is whether she'll listen." By mid-afternoon, John was surprised to find himself growing more sensitive to the mineral field. As he worked near a particularly active area that Telem had identified, he could sense the Aldebaran's presence even when they were in another room. Their mental patterns felt different from humans, more structured, with colors John couldn't quite name. "Your neural implant is adapting quickly," Telem observed, noticing John's reaction. "Most humans require weeks of exposure before sensing patterns so clearly." "Is it dangerous?" John asked. "Not at all. The connection merely expands awareness. You remain fully yourself, but with added perception." General Zara joined them carrying equipment from the ship. The enhanced perception saved many lives during the war. Some human Aldebaran teams developed battlefield awareness that gave them significant advantages. This was news to John. "I never heard about that in military reports." "It was classified," Zara explained. "Too many feared the implications, but those who experienced it understood its value." She paused. "Your uncle was part of an early test group." John stopped what he was doing. "My uncle never mentioned serving with Aldebarans. His work was highly classified. He volunteered for early mineral field studies after detecting natural sensitivity. That research led him here to one of the strongest fields outside our homeworld." This explained why his uncle had been so insistent that John inherit the ranch. He hadn't just been leaving property, he'd been passing on a legacy. At 5:45 p.m. the first guests arrived. To John's surprise, it wasn't Susan Wright, but 3 other members of the Earthview community. They introduced themselves as Bill and Nancy, Clark, a retired couple, and Diane Foster, the younger woman who had spoken up yesterday. "We wanted to come early," Diane explained, "to talk without Susan controlling the conversation." Bill nodded. "Some of us don't share her views about your research. We're curious, not hostile." John welcomed them warmly and introduced the Aldebarans. Ambassador Alara greeted them with formal courtesy, while Telem immediately launched into explanations of their equipment. General Zara stood back, observing quietly. Diane approached John while the others talked. "I worked in medical research before moving here," she said. "The potential applications of this field effect for neural recovery sound promising. My brother lost an arm in the war and has a similar implant to yours. The Aldebarans believe it could help with phantom pain and neural integration," John said. "That's why I spoke up yesterday. Susan doesn't speak for all of us." More residents arrived until 15 people from Earthview Estates filled John's living room. Susan arrived last, looking displeased at the turnout. Dr. Lisa began with a presentation, explaining the research in simple terms. She showed scans of the mineral deposits beneath the ranch and demonstrated how they interacted with neural patterns. The potential benefits include improved recovery for neural trauma patients, enhanced cross-species communication, and deeper understanding of consciousness itself, she explained. Science counselor Telem then demonstrated a simple field effect, using a device that visualized neural patterns as colored lights floating in the air. When John stood near it, the patterns grew brighter and more complex. "Mr. Miller's neural implant acts as a natural amplifier," Telem explained. Similar to how a radio antenna boosts a signal, the residents watched with fascination. Even Susan seemed reluctantly interested. "Is it safe?" someone asked. "Could these fields harm us or our children?" "The fields exist naturally," Ambassador Alara explained. "They have been present in this location for millennia. Our research merely studies them. They have no harmful effects on any life forms we have studied." The evening progressed better than John had hoped. The Earthview residents asked thoughtful questions. Several expressed interest in potential medical applications. Diane asked about volunteer opportunities with the research team. Only Susan remained skeptical. John could sense her frustration growing as she saw her neighbors engaging positively with the Aldebarans. "What about property values?" she finally asked during a lull in conversation. "Alien research facilities aren't exactly desirable neighbors for a premium human settlement." Ambassador Ilara turned to her. "On the contrary, Ms. Wright, colonies with Aldebaran research partnerships typically see significant economic growth. Our presence often brings additional investment, advanced technology, and employment opportunities. Not to mention," Dr. Lisa added, "colonies with established Aldebaran relations receive priority for new medical technologies, including those that might benefit from this research." John felt the shift in the room. The economic argument caught the attention of even the most hesitant residents. As the evening wound down, John walked the guests back toward the property line. The night was clear, with both of New Horizons' moons visible in the sky. "Thank you for coming," he said to the group. "I hope this has answered some questions." "It was enlightening," Bill Clark said. "Whatever Susan might say, most of us are glad to have interesting neighbors." Susan walked ahead, clearly unhappy with how the evening had unfolded. When they reached the stream that marked the property boundary, she turned to face John. "This little demonstration doesn't change anything," she said. "The Colonial Council will still hear our complaint tomorrow." "You mean your complaint?" Diane corrected. "I'll be withdrawing my signature, and I suspect others will too." Susan's face hardened. "The Council takes security concerns seriously. A veteran with experimental alien technology affecting his neural implants is a security risk, by definition. General Zara is a veteran too," John pointed out. "Should she be considered a security risk?" "She's not human," Susan snapped. The prejudice in her voice was unmistakable. Several of her neighbors looked uncomfortable. "Susan," Bill Clark said, "I think you're taking this too far." "Am I? What happens if his implant malfunctions due to these experiments? What if he has a PTSD episode enhanced by alien technology? He could be dangerous to all of us." John felt a wave of anger rising. The familiar tingling at his implant intensified, and suddenly he could feel everyone's emotions clearly. Susan's, fear and anger, the neighbor's discomfort, and something else approaching rapidly from behind him. He turned to see General Zara walking toward them. She had clearly heard Susan's words. John Miller served honorably in a war that threatened both our species, she said, her voice measured but firm. He bears physical and neural scars as evidence of his sacrifice. To suggest his service makes him dangerous rather than worthy of respect shows profound ignorance. Susan took a step back, startled by the general's unexpected appearance. "The council meeting is at 10 tomorrow morning," she said, regaining her composure. "We'll see what they think about all this." As she walked away, several neighbors stayed behind to apologize to John. "Don't worry about tomorrow," Diane said. "Most of us will be there to support your project." John watched them go, feeling both concern and hope. The mineral field hummed around him, responding to his emotions. "She will not stop," General Zara said quietly, standing beside him. "She fears what she cannot control." "I know," John replied. "But for the first time, I don't think she speaks for her community." And in that moment, he sensed something new. From the mineral field, not just emotions or presence, but a glimpse of possibility, of what might come tomorrow. Whether it was the field enhancing his intuition or something more, John couldn't tell. But he knew the conflict with Susan Wright was heading toward a breaking point. The morning of the Colonial Council meeting dawned bright and clear. John woke early, feeling both nervous and determined. He dressed in his best clothes, not a military uniform, but a simple dark blue suit that his uncle had kept for formal occasions. Ambassador Ilara, Dr. Lisa, and General Zara would attend the meeting with him. Science counselor Tellem would remain at the ranch to continue the research. As they prepared to leave, Tellem approached John with a small device. "This will help you maintain balance if the mineral field connection becomes overwhelming," he explained, handing John what looked like a simple metal disc. "Keep it in your pocket." John thanked him and slipped the device into his jacket. His connection to the field had grown stronger overnight. Even now, standing in his living room, he could sense the emotions of everyone around him. Tellem's curiosity, Lisa's concern, Ilara's calm confidence, and Zara's battle-ready focus. They arrived at the Colonial Administration building 30 minutes before the scheduled meeting. The large central chamber was already filling with people. John spotted several Earthview residents, including Diane Foster and the Clarks, sitting together on one side. Susan Wright sat at a table near the front with 3 people John didn't recognize, likely lawyers or consultants she had brought to support her case. At precisely 10 o'clock, 5 council members entered and took their seats at the raised platform at the front of the room. The chief counselor, Helen Martinez, called the meeting to order. Today we address concerns raised by citizens of Earthview Estates regarding research activities on neighboring property owned by John Miller, she announced. Ms. Wright has filed a formal complaint alleging security risks and improper alien activity in proximity to human residences. Susan stood and approached the podium. Her presentation was well prepared and delivered with confidence. She spoke of property values, security concerns, and the need for stricter oversight of alien activities near human settlements. She emphasized John's military background and cybernetic enhancements as potential risks. The combination of experimental alien technology and an enhanced veteran with possible PTSD creates an unacceptable danger to our community, she concluded. We request that all research be moved to the designated science district, away from residential areas. John could sense her emotion beneath the polished words, not just fear, but a deep need for control, for things to remain familiar and unchanged. The mineral field connection let him see past her words to the person beneath. When it was John's turn to speak, he approached the podium calmly. He explained the research project, its official authorization, and its potential benefits for veterans and interspecies relations. This land has been in my family since the colony was founded, he said. My uncle chose to participate in this research because he believed in building bridges between our species. I'm continuing that work. He turned to look directly at Susan. Ms. Wright claims to be concerned about safety, but what I sense from her and some others is fear of change, fear of the unknown, and unfortunately, prejudice against those who are different, whether that's aliens like our Aldebaran friends or enhanced veterans like me. A murmur ran through the chamber. John continued. Yesterday, 15 Earthview residents visited my ranch. They met the Aldebarans, saw the research, and asked questions. Many left with a completely different perspective. Diane Foster stood up from her seat. I'd like to speak, if I may. The chief counselor nodded and Diane walked to the front of the room. I initially signed Ms. Wright's complaint because I was concerned, she admitted. But after visiting the ranch and seeing the research firsthand, I withdraw my support. This project could help people like my brother, who has a neural implant similar to Mr. Miller's. One by one, other Earthview residents stood to withdraw their support from the complaint. Bill Clark spoke about the economic benefits Ambassador Ilara had mentioned. Another resident, a doctor, expressed interest in the medical applications. Susan's face grew increasingly flushed as her neighbors turned against her. John could feel her anger and humiliation building to a dangerous level. When Dr. Lisa presented the official permits and approvals for the research, Susan suddenly stood up. This is all very touching, she said sarcastically. But it doesn't address the fundamental security concern. Mr. Miller's neural implant is being affected by alien technology. He admitted it himself. She pulled out her tablet. And I have proof that it's already causing dangerous behavior. She played a recording from one of her drones. It showed John on his property, working near the stream. In the video, he suddenly straightened up with a strange expression, then looked directly at the drone as if he knew it was there. He's developing abilities that aren't human, Susan declared. He can sense things he shouldn't be able to sense. Today it's detecting surveillance drones. Tomorrow, who knows? Mind control? Weaponized psychic abilities? The room fell silent. John felt the weight of everyone's attention. Ms. Wright is right about one thing, he said quietly. The mineral field does enhance perception. I can sense emotions now, Fear, hope, curiosity. What she calls dangerous abilities are actually improved empathy and awareness. He looked around the room. I fought in a war that nearly destroyed both our species. I lost friends, lost parts of my body. What I gained from those losses was perspective. We shouldn't fear difference, we should learn from it. General Zara stepped forward. The Galactic Council of Sentient Species is currently reviewing Earth's application for full membership. One of their key criteria is how human colonies treat veterans and how they handle diversity. This case will be of particular interest to them. This statement caused another stir in the chamber. Full membership in the Galactic Council would mean advanced trade agreements and technological sharing, a significant economic boost for the entire colony. Chief Counselor Martinez looked thoughtful. Thank you all for your input. The Council will take a brief recess to consider this matter. During the recess, John noticed Susan making an urgent call on her communicator. He sensed her desperation, her unwillingness to accept defeat. Through the growing field connection, he caught fragments of her words: emergency response and need immediate action. When the council returned, Chief Counselor Martinez addressed the room. After reviewing all evidence and testimonies, this council finds no basis for the security concerns raised by Ms. Wright. The research project on Mr. Miller's property is properly authorized and will be allowed to continue. Furthermore, we will establish a community liaison committee to ensure ongoing communication between all parties. The decision was met with applause from most of the room. John felt relief wash over him. As people began to leave, Susan pushed past him toward the exit. Her face was tight with anger and something else: determination. John's enhanced perception picked up her intent before she even reached the door. She's not giving up, he said to General Zara. She's calling emergency services, making a false report. Outside the building, they heard sirens approaching. 3 emergency vehicles raced toward the colony center. She's called in a false emergency at my ranch, John realized. She's trying to force a security response. Dr. Lisa looked alarmed. Tellem is still there with all our equipment. Without hesitation, John, Lisa, and the Aldebarans rushed to their vehicle. As they sped toward the ranch, John's connection to the mineral field grew stronger the closer they got. He could sense Tellem's confusion and the presence of armed colony, security personnel surrounding his home. This is her last desperate move, General Zara said grimly. She hopes to create a confrontation that will justify her fears. John nodded. But it's going to backfire. The field connection works both ways. Tellem can sense their intentions just as I can. As they pulled up to the ranch, John saw Susan standing with colony security officers, pointing dramatically at his house. When she spotted him arriving, her expression shifted to shock. You're supposed to be at the council meeting, she blurted out. What exactly did you tell these officers, Ms. Wright? John asked calmly. The lead security officer looked uncomfortable. She reported dangerous alien activity and possible weapons deployment. John smiled. I think you'll find my friend Tellem is simply conducting approved scientific research. Would you like to see the council's decision that was just issued? As the situation diffused, Susan's face crumpled. Her final gambit had failed completely. Ms. Right, the security officer said sternly. Filing a false emergency report is a serious offense. In that moment, John made a decision. The mineral field hummed around him, and he sensed the potential for something better than punishment. Officer, he said, rather than pressing charges, I have a different suggestion.